came in a plain, yellowed envelope. No return address. Just my name. Written in blue ink. Soft, curved handwriting I hadn't seen in 2 decades. I dropped my coffee. My hands shook as I picked it up. I knew that handwriting. I used to dream about it. I used to trace those letters on my skin in the dark, imagining her fingers instead of ink. Claire. No, couldn't be. She was gone, buried, lost to time and silence. And yet, the envelope was sealed, untouched, as if it had traveled through a black hole and landed in my mailbox by accident. I didn't open it. Not right away. I just stared. Sat down on the porch steps and stared at it like it was a ghost. Because in a way it was. Claire had died in a car accident 19 years ago. I remember the call. I remember the scream that left my body. I remember falling to my knees in the middle of a grocery store parking lot, shattering a bottle of wine. We hadn't spoken for months before she died. We'd fought, bad, and then she was gone. Now I'm holding a letter she wrote me before she died. And I don't know if I want to know what it says. But I need to. Took me 6 hours. 6 goddamn hours of pacing, of pouring whiskey, of staring at the past like it might explode. And then I finally did it. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper. The ink was faded, but the words were there. So was her scent, faint vanilla and something floral. My chest caved in. I started reading. Hey idiot. If you're reading this, it means I finally found the courage to send it. Or maybe I didn't. Maybe the universe did it for me. Either way, you're holding my truth in your hands. I'm in love with you, Matt. I dropped it. My whole body went cold. I felt like I couldn't breathe. She'd never told me. Not like that. We danced around it. We'd kissed. We'd fought. We'd hurt each other. But she never said those words. She wrote them. But I never got the letter. Until now. I'm scared. That's why I didn't say it before. You scare the hell out of me, Matt. You make me feel like maybe I'm not as broken as I think I am. You make me want things I swore I didn't believe in anymore. You make me want a forever. God. Claire. I don't know if you feel the same. Maybe you don't. Maybe I'm just another girl in your long list of almosts. But I had to say it. I had to try. I want you. I love you. If you don't feel it too, just forget this letter. I couldn't stop shaking. But if you do, meet me at the pier. Friday, 8 p.m. I'll be there. I'll wait. The letter was dated April 14th, 2005. I never showed up, because I never got the damn letter. And she never told me she waited. She died a month later. And I never knew. I don't know what I thought I'd find there. Maybe a ghost. Maybe some trace of her spirit still clinging to the railings, to the ocean breeze. Maybe some kind of cosmic apology, something to make the last 20 years make sense. The boards creaked beneath my boots as I stepped out onto the pier. The same pier she mentioned. The same one we used to sneak off to after parties, drunk on cheap vodka and each other. It looked the same, but everything felt different. I walked to the very end. The waves crashed beneath me, wild and angry, like they knew, like the ocean itself wanted to scream with me. I stood right where she said she'd be, and I just broke. I dropped to my knees, clutching the letter to my chest, choking on 20 years of grief I didn't know I was still carrying. She'd waited here. She'd sat on this bench, maybe for hours, maybe hoping I'd come running, tell her I loved her back, maybe thinking I was a coward, or worse, that I didn't care. But I did. God, I did. I just never knew. How does that even happen? How does a letter take 20 years to arrive? I spent the next week hunting for answers. I called the post office, spoke to 3 different supervisors. One of them, an older guy with a raspy voice, told me they'd recently reopened a condemned building that used to be a sorting facility. Flooded basement, he said. Found a whole damn crate of undelivered mail. I asked him what year. He checked. Looks like '05. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was so absurd it felt like a sick joke. One letter. One fucking letter, and it ruined everything. After that, I couldn't sleep. I started digging through old boxes. Photos. Notes. Pieces of Claire I'd buried deep. I found a Polaroid of her in my flannel shirt, drinking coffee on my balcony. Her eyes were closed. She looked so alive. I found a mix CD she made for me, labeled Songs Matt Will Pretend He Doesn't Like. I found a necklace. Hers. I didn't even remember keeping it. And then I found the journal. It was hidden inside a shoebox labeled Matt and Claire. Do not open? Seriously. Of course I opened it. The first entry was from 2003. He kissed me today. Finally. After months of pretending we were just friends. I think my bones melted. I think this is what falling in love feels like. Each page after that was like time travel. Like watching us live and die again and again. Fights, passion, silence, apologies, hope, until the last entry. I mailed it. I finally did it. I told him everything. If he doesn't show up, I'll know. But I have to believe he will. I have to believe in us. Just one more time. That was the end. No more pages. Just that last hope. And my silence. I should have been there. I hadn't spoken to Claire's mother since the funeral. She never liked me. Thought I was reckless. Too damaged. Not the kind of man Claire needs. She once told me with a smile that felt like a dagger. But I had to see her. I had to ask. I drove to the house where Claire grew up, an old white colonial on the corner of Maple and 8th. The roses in the front yard were dead. The paint on the porch was peeling. I stood there for 5 minutes before I knocked. She opened the door slowly. Time had aged her, sharpened her features. But her eyes, same cold steel. Matt. Her voice was flat. No surprise. No warmth. I need to talk to you, I said. She didn't invite me in. I didn't expect her to. I held up the letter. I just got this. Last week. Claire wrote it. Her face didn't move, but something flickered in her eyes. I never knew, I said. She told me to meet her. At the pier. I never showed. Because I never got the damn letter. Her fingers tightened on the edge of the door. Then she exhaled. And stepped aside. The house was quiet. Empty in a haunted kind of way. I followed her to the kitchen. She poured herself a glass of wine and sat down without offering me one. I always wondered if you knew, she said finally. Knew what? That she waited. That night. She was sure you'd come. I swallowed hard. She told you? She came home crying, she said, staring at the glass. Didn't say a word at first. Just walked into her room and shut the door. Next morning, she said you didn't show. Said she got her answer. I looked down at the letter. She thought I didn't care. She was heartbroken, her mother said. I told her not to write that letter. Told her not to embarrass herself. But Claire never listened. She said she had to try. That love was worth the risk. She mailed it, I said. But it got lost. I didn't get it until last week. Her mother closed her eyes. God, I would have been there. If I had known. I would have. My voice broke. She looked at me, really looked this time. And something in her face softened. Just barely. I always thought you broke her, she said. But maybe it wasn't you. Maybe it was fate. No, I said. It was me. I should have told her. I should have fought harder. Silence. And then, from somewhere deep in her grief-hardened shell, her voice came low, cracked. She loved you, Matt. More than I ever understood. I nodded. I loved her too. She reached into a drawer, pulled out a small box, handed it to me. She wanted you to have this. I found it after the accident. But I didn't think you deserved it. Inside was a ring. Simple. Silver. With a tiny engraving. M&C, maybe in another life. I held it in my hand like it was made of fire. And for the first time in 20 years, Claire's mother started to cry. After I left her mother's house, I drove around for hours. Didn't know where I was going. Didn't care. I ended up back at my apartment, but I couldn't go inside. The walls felt too tight, too quiet. I sat in my car with the engine off and stared at nothing. And then the dreams started. Every night, Claire. Not how she looked at the end. Not even how she looked when we first met. But her at the pier. In a white dress. Wind blowing her hair around her face. eyes full of hope and pain and questions. She never spoke. She just stared. And I woke up choking on her name. I started talking to her, out loud, like a lunatic, in the shower, while making coffee, sitting on the edge of my bed, holding the damn letter like it might answer me back. I would have come, Claire. I swear to God, I would have come. But the words felt hollow. Too little. Too late. Like everything else. I found myself going to places we used to go. The bar on 3rd Street. The lake house her cousin owned. The diner where we always got fries and split a milkshake, even though she hated sharing. Everything felt like her. Everything hurt. I couldn't escape the weight of all the time we lost. And then one night, I pulled out the old flip phone I'd kept for some reason. Dead as hell. But I charged it, just in case. There were voicemails. Most were garbage. But then there was one I'd never heard. From Claire. Her voice was shaky, barely above a whisper. Hey, I know I said I wouldn't call, but I guess I'm scared you didn't get the letter. Or maybe you did and you just didn't want to. I don't know. I'm trying not to spiral. I pressed the phone harder against my ear. I'm at the pier. It's cold. I'm wearing your jacket. Remember the one I stole after that bonfire? Yeah. Still smells like you. I felt the tears before I even realized I was crying. I'll wait a little longer. Just in case. But if you don't come, I'll understand. I promise. I needed you to know. You were it for me. You were always it. Click. That was it. No goodbye. Just silence. And my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I had missed the most important moment of my life. Because of one lost letter. The next day, I booked a cabin by the water. I needed to disappear. Not forever. Just long enough to figure out how to live with the weight of what I missed. But grief has claws. And I was about to learn just how deep they could cut. The cabin was small. Quiet. Remote. Exactly what I needed. It sat right on the edge of Lake Travis, tucked between tall pines and fog-covered hills. There was no Wi-Fi. Barely a signal. Just the sound of water lapping at the shore and wind whistling through trees. I spent the first 3 days drinking and staring at the ring. Sometimes I'd slip it on my finger. Just to see what it felt like. Just to pretend for one brief second that things had gone differently. That I had gotten the letter in time. That Claire was still alive. On the 4th day, I went into town to buy more coffee and cigarettes. That's when I met her. She was standing in line at the register arguing with the cashier over a price sticker. Blonde hair in a messy bun. Tattoo of a wave on her neck. And when she turned and saw me, she froze. Matt? My stomach dropped. I didn't recognize her at first. But then I did. A memory hit me like a freight train. Claire's birthday. Her laughing, arm around the same girl, both of them drunk and singing off-key in my kitchen. Emily? I said. She nodded. Jesus. I thought you moved to Oregon. I did, she said. Came back last year. Too many ghosts there. I wanted to say there are plenty here too, but I didn't. Instead, I just stared at her. She stared back. And then, with a strange sort of softness in her voice, she said. You heard about the letter, didn't you? I felt like my heart stopped. You knew. I was with her when she wrote it. We went outside. Sat on a bench beside the gas station. Lit cigarettes with trembling hands. She was so damn scared, Emily said, blowing smoke into the cold air. She kept asking if it was a mistake. If it was too much. If you'd laugh at her. I never would have, I said. God, if I'd gotten that letter. I know. She looked at me, eyes glossy. She waited at the pier for 3 hours, Matt. Wouldn't let me stay with her. Said it had to be just you. Said if you came, she'd know it was real. I rubbed my hands over my face. I didn't know. I swear to God, Emily, I didn't know. I believe you, she whispered. We sat in silence for a while. And then she said something that shattered me. She thought she wasn't enough for you. What? She told me, Emily said. She thought you wanted someone steadier. Someone easier. You two were fire and gasoline. But she loved you, Matt. Even when it hurt. I felt like I couldn't breathe. And then Emily reached into her bag and pulled out a worn envelope. She made me promise not to give you this unless you asked. Unless you really wanted to know how she felt. I took it with shaking hands. Inside was a photo. Me and Claire. Lying in the grass behind my old apartment. Her head on my chest. My eyes closed. Both of us smiling like we didn't know pain yet. On the back, written in her handwriting. This was the happiest I've ever been. Even if he never knows it. I broke right there. In front of the gas station. In front of Claire's best friend. Because she was gone. And now I finally knew just how much I'd lost. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing her voice in that voicemail. The way it trembled. The pause before, "I'll understand." She never should have had to say that. I lay in the cabin bed, staring at the ceiling, holding the photo Emily gave me. My fingers traced Claire's smile over and over, like I was trying to memorize something I'd already forgotten once. And then I got up, lit a fire, sat at the wooden desk by the window, and started to write. "Hey Claire, I got your letter. 20 years too late, but I got it. I don't know what hurts more, the fact that I never got to tell you how I felt, or the fact that you thought I didn't feel it at all. I loved you. I still do. I think I always will." The words poured out of me like blood from an old wound. Everything I'd swallowed. Everything I'd buried. Every what if. You were right, we were fire and gasoline. But damn Claire, we burned so beautifully. I wish I could go back. Just one night. I'd be there. I'd run to you. I'd pull you into my arms and never let go. I stopped. My hand was shaking. I pressed the pen to the page again. I hope wherever you are, you know it now. I hope you know I didn't forget you. That I never moved on. Not really. This world got colder without you. And I got lost in it. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm sitting next to you again. Telling you everything I should have said when I had the chance. I folded the letter. Put it in an envelope. Wrote her name on the front. Then I walked outside, barefoot in the cold, and burned it in the fire pit behind the cabin. Watched the flames eat the paper, the ink, the grief. Watched the ashes swirl into the night sky like a prayer. I whispered to the dark, "I love you." Just in case she was listening. The next morning I packed up. I didn't know where I was going next. But I knew I couldn't stay buried in a cabin forever. Claire wouldn't want that. She wouldn't want me drowning in what-ifs and ghost memories. So I drove. Miles of highway. Empty coffee cups. A ring still resting in my pocket. But something was changing. Something inside me had finally cracked open. And it wasn't pain anymore. It was clarity. Because the story wasn't over. Not yet. Not until I made sure her memory lived the way she deserved. I couldn't go back to my old life. Not after the letter. Not after Emily. Not after I heard Claire's voice in that voicemail waiting for me in the dark like I was her last hope. So I made a list. Every place we ever went. Every spot that had a memory tied to her name. And I visited them all. The first stop was Austin. 6th Street. The dive bar where we danced like idiots one summer night, drenched in sweat and whiskey, screaming the lyrics to some punk band we didn't even like. It was still there. Same neon sign. Same sticky floors. Different crowd. I sat at the same booth where Claire once leaned over and kissed me mid-laugh, her hand in my hair, her breath smelling like lime and gin. I left a note under the table. She loved this place. If you ever feel like dancing with a ghost, this is a good spot. I don't know why. It felt right. Next was Big Bend. We'd gone there once on a spontaneous road trip. No plans. No map. Just the two of us and a borrowed tent. I hiked the same trail we did back then. Sat on the same cliff edge where she once dared me to yell, "I love you, Claire," into the canyon below. I had. Laughed while doing it. She kissed me so hard afterward I nearly fell off the ledge. This time I sat alone. And whispered it. No dare. No audience. Just me, the wind, and the aching space where she used to be. I found more than just places. I found people. Her college roommate in Chicago, now a nurse with 2 kids. She cried when I told her about the letter. A tattoo artist in Santa Fe who said Claire once got drunk and asked if he could ink a moon behind her ear because someone I love never sees the full version of me. He said he refused because she was too tipsy. I regret that now, he told me. She seemed like the kind of girl who deserved to leave a mark. She did. God, she did. Everywhere I went, I left something behind. A flower. A photo. A message. Tiny breadcrumbs of our story scattered across the country like constellations. Because she deserved to be remembered. Not just by me. Not just in my head. But out in the world. Where strangers could feel her. Even if they didn't know her name. And then one day I found something I hadn't expected. In a bookstore in Denver. Tucked inside an old used poetry book. A letter. Folded. Yellowed. Addressed to no one. But I knew that handwriting. Claire. I opened it with trembling hands. It wasn't to me. It was to herself. You're going to be okay. Even if he never comes. Even if he never says it back. You're still worthy of love. Of joy. Of a life that isn't defined by silence. I sat down on the floor between the shelves and cried like a child. Because she was okay. Even in the waiting. Even in the heartbreak. She still believed in something better. And now it was my turn to do the same. It happened in Nashville. I'd stopped for a coffee, nothing more. Just a break from the road, from the ghosts, from the weight of the letter still folded in my jacket pocket like it was stitched into my skin. And then she walked in. Same walk. Same kind of half-tuck in her shirt. Same habit of pulling her sleeves down over her fingers. She looked just like Claire. No, not exactly. Her eyes were hazel, not green. Her voice had a southern lilt Claire never had. But still, for a second, I thought I was seeing a ghost in daylight. She ordered tea. Sat 2 tables away. Pulled out a book of Rainer Maria Rilke poetry. I stared like an idiot. Because Claire loved Rilke. Quoted him when she was drunk. Scribbled his lines on our bathroom mirror with eyeliner. The girl looked up. Caught me staring. I looked away too late. She smiled. Do I have something on my face? She asked. I blinked. No. Sorry. You just look like someone I used to know. She tilted her head, curious. Someone important? I nodded. The most. We talked. I don't know why. Maybe because I was lonely. Maybe because she reminded me of something I couldn't name. Maybe because for one fleeting second it felt like the universe had sent me a stand-in. Her name was Hallie. She was an artist. Painted cityscapes with oil and palette knives. Had a laugh that shook her whole body. Wore mismatched earrings. Talked with her hands. And she felt like sunshine. Which hurt more than it helped. I told her everything. Not all at once. But over the course of 2 days. The letter. The voicemail. The ring. Claire. She didn't flinch. Didn't get scared or awkward or try to change the subject. Instead, she asked, did you love her the way people write about in novels? And I said no. She raised an eyebrow. I smiled. I loved her harder. That night, Hallie kissed me. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't sexual. It was quiet. Gentle. On the cheek. Like a benediction. You're still carrying her, she said. And that's okay. Some people never leave us. They're woven in. I nodded. And for the first time in 20 years, I didn't feel guilty for letting someone touch my heart. Even for a moment. The next morning, she was gone. Left a note on my windshield. You don't need to run forever. Just long enough to remember who you were before the silence. She didn't leave a number. I didn't try to find her. Because I knew what she was. A chapter. Not a replacement. Not a fix. Just a beautiful, unexpected page in the book Claire never got to finish writing. And somehow that felt like a gift. I'd avoided it for so long. Too long. When Claire died, I went to the funeral, stood at the back like a shadow, and left before the dirt hit the coffin. I told myself I couldn't handle it. That she wouldn't have wanted me there anyway. That it would only make it worse. But that was a lie. The truth is I couldn't face her. Not the final version of her. Not the cold stone. Not the proof that I had waited too long to say what mattered most. But now, after the letter, the journal, Emily Hallie. I had no more excuses. So I went. It was raining. Of course it was. The kind of rain that soaks through your coat and your bones and your soul. Gray skies. Empty cemetery. Just rows and rows of people who never got to say goodbye. Her stone was simple. Claire Elise Morgan. 1983 to 2005. A spark in a dark world. That was it. No photo. No flowers. It looked forgotten. Like time had tried to erase her. And I wouldn't let that happen. I knelt in the mud, pulled the letter from my coat, and read it out loud. Every word. My voice cracked halfway through, but I kept going. I owed her that. When I finished, I laid the ring on the stone. I know I'm 20 years late, I whispered, but I would have said yes. The rain fell harder. Like the sky was grieving too. I stayed there for hours. Talked to her like she was sitting across from me. Told her about the bar, the bookstore, the people I met who still remembered her. Told her about Hallie. About the way she laughed like Claire used to even if she wasn't Claire. Told her I was sorry. Over and over. Until I had nothing left. Then I stood. Reached into my coat pocket. Pulled out the photo, the one Emily gave me, of us lying in the grass, smiling like idiots. I placed it beneath the ring. And walked away. As I got into my car, I looked back one last time. The grave didn't look lonely anymore. Not to me. Not now that a piece of our story finally rested where she did. She deserved that much. At the very least. I didn't mean to. It just happened. One night, weeks after the cemetery, I was sitting in my apartment with the letter open on the table, the voicemail saved on every device I owned, and my head filled with her voice. And I started typing. At first, it was just for me. A way to bleed it out. Get the poison out of my chest. The guilt. The grief. The ifs. But the words didn't stop. They came like a flood. Her laugh in the rain. Her bare feet on my dashboard. The way she'd roll her eyes and smile when I pretended not to care but looked at her like she was the sun itself. I wrote about the pier. About the letter. About everything. And suddenly it wasn't just a journal. It was a book. A goddamn love story. Except it didn't end with a wedding or a kiss or some perfect promise. It ended with silence. And regret. And a letter that arrived 20 years too late. I gave it a title. To the girl at the end of the pier. I printed one copy. Held it in my hands. Didn't know what I was going to do with it. I wasn't an author. I worked in logistics. My life was spreadsheets and late shipments and unpaid invoices. But this was real. So I sent it to a small press. Didn't expect to hear back. Didn't even put my real phone number. 3 weeks later, I got an email. They wanted to publish it. Said it was the most raw, painful, beautiful thing they'd read in years. Said it made them cry. Said it made them feel. I laughed when I read that part. Because Claire always said that was what love was supposed to do. Make you feel. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. The book came out quietly. No fanfare. Just a slim paperback on a shelf in a quiet section of a quiet store. But people found it. They wrote to the publisher. Emails. Letters. This saved me. This reminded me of someone I lost. I'm going to call her right now before it's too late. It hit me then. Claire's story, our story, was saving people. Even in death, she was still a spark in the dark. Still setting hearts on fire. And somehow I knew it. She'd be proud. She always wanted to be remembered. Now the whole world was reading her name. The email came at 2:17 a.m. No subject line. No signature. Just a sentence. I have something Claire wrote. You need to see it. I thought it was a scam. Some troll trying to mess with me after the book came out. But then there was a photo attached. A letter. Folded once aged. Same lined paper. Same slanted handwriting. I zoomed in. My chest tightened. It was hers. Another letter. Different from the first. This one was dated May 10th, 2005. For weeks before the accident. The pit in my stomach turned to stone. I replied immediately. Who are you? How do you have this? Nothing for hours. Then at 9:42 a.m. a new message. My brother dated Claire briefly before she passed. She gave him this, told him to hold it until she could decide if she still meant what she wrote. He never mailed it. He didn't think it mattered after she died. I didn't respond. I got in my car. Drove 6 hours to the return address listed in the email. It was real. A woman answered the door. Mid-30s. Nervous. She handed me the letter in silence. I don't want anything, she said. I just thought you should have it. I thanked her. Drove to the nearest diner. Sat in a booth with black coffee and shaking hands. And opened the letter. Matt. If you're reading this, I guess I never had the guts to send the first one. Or maybe I did, and now I'm terrified of what happens next. I waited for you at the pier. I told myself I wouldn't cry if you didn't show. But I did. And even though you didn't come, I still love you. I couldn't breathe. Maybe you were scared. Maybe you didn't feel the same. Maybe the letter got lost. Maybe a million things. But none of that changes the truth. I don't regret loving you. Even if it hurt. Tears hit the page. Smudged the ink. I've started seeing someone. He's nice. Steady. But he's not you. I don't know if we'll last. I think part of me will always be waiting for the boy who yelled, I love you, into a canyon and laughed like it was nothing. That boy was everything. She signed it the same way she signed everything she was scared to mean too deeply. See. The coffee went cold. I read the letter again. And again. And it hit me she never stopped loving me. Even when she thought I didn't show up. Even when she tried to move on. Even when she was slipping away from this world. She still loved me. And maybe she had doubts. Maybe she thought I'd chosen silence. But deep down, she never stopped believing in what we had. Neither did I. We just got caught in the space between. Between courage and fear. Between timing and fate. Between one letter that was sent. And one that never got the chance. His name was Caleb. I found him through the return address on the envelope, public records, social media, and old photography blog he hadn't updated in over a decade. I didn't know what I expected. Resentment? Guilt? Some pathetic attempt to say he meant well? What I found was a man who looked like time had punished him. Gray hair at the temples. Eyes that wouldn't stay on mine. Hands that shook when he poured coffee into chipped mugs. He knew why I was there. I figured you'd come, he said. After my sister gave you the letter. I pulled it from my coat and placed it on the table between us. You held this for 20 years. I didn't know what to do with it, he said. You could have mailed it. Or burned it. But instead, you just kept it. He looked away. She gave it to me the night we broke up. I froze. She broke up with you? He nodded. She said she couldn't pretend anymore. Said her heart was still somewhere else. I swallowed hard. Did she say my name? No, he said. But she didn't have to. We sat in silence for a long time. Then Caleb said something that split me in two. I wasn't angry that she ended it. I was angry because I knew I was never in it. Not really. I was just the quiet space between two storms. I stared at the table. She thought I didn't love her back. He shook his head. No. She thought you were scared. That maybe you'd been hurt before. That you just needed more time. But she never hated you. Not for a second. I clenched my fists beneath the table. She died thinking I didn't care. No, he said softly. She died hoping you did. Before I left, he handed me something else. A photograph. Claire. Sitting on a dock, her knees tucked into her chest, smiling at the camera with that lopsided grin she gave when she was trying not to cry. On the back, in her handwriting. Don't wait forever, Matt. You deserve to be loved too. I stared at the photo. And then at Caleb. Why didn't you ever tell me? I asked. He looked me dead in the eyes. Because I was selfish. I thought maybe if I held onto a piece of her, it'd make the ache smaller. I nodded. Because I understood that. Too well. I left without another word. Got into my car. Turned the photo over in my hands a dozen times. She had moved on. Tried to. But our hearts were still tangled. Still unfinished. And now after everything. I knew the full truth. She had waited. She had hoped. And until her last breath, some part of her still believed in us. Even after the silence. Even after the goodbye. Even after the love was too late. I don't believe in ghosts. At least, I didn't. But after the second letter, after the photograph, after everything I'd uncovered, I couldn't shake the feeling she was around me. Everywhere. I'd see a woman in a crowd with her hair. Her walk. Her posture. And my chest would clench like it had to be her. Like the universe had folded in on itself and rewound the clock. But it never was. Just strangers. Just shadows. Just memories playing dress-up. One afternoon, I was sitting outside a bookstore in Asheville, sipping bad coffee and scribbling notes for a second book, something raw, something truthful. And then I heard it. Her laugh. Clear. Soft. So unmistakably hers that I nearly dropped my pen. I turned so fast I knocked my cup over. But when I looked it wasn't Claire. Of course it wasn't. It was a young woman with headphones in, smiling at something on her phone. But for a second, a single goddamn second. I felt her. Right there beside me. I whispered her name like a prayer. Claire. The girl looked up, confused, then smiled politely and went back to her world. And I sat there, breathless, wondering if I was going insane. I told Emily about it over the phone. You're not crazy, she said. She's still with you. Just not the way you want. That's worse, I said. I'd rather lose her completely than keep finding her in every corner of the world. Emily paused. No, you wouldn't. She was right. Because the truth is, those glimpses, those moments where it felt like she was back, they hurt like hell. But they were all I had. And I wasn't ready to let them go. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That night, I stood in front of the mirror. Held up the ring again. Looked myself in the eye. You don't get to have her back, I said aloud. But you do get to keep her with you. So stop running from the ache. Live with it. That was the first night I slept without dreams. No pier. No whispers. No ghosts. Just darkness. And strangely peace. Because she wasn't haunting me. She was reminding me that I had loved. That I had been loved. And that even when time rips people from your life, it can't erase what was real. I didn't even know he was still alive. Claire rarely spoke of him. Said he left when she was 10. Said he used to send postcards from random places, Utah, Vancouver, sometimes Paris, but never came back. She said she stopped reading them after a while. I got tired of waiting for someone who only wanted to be a story, she told me once. But now, out of nowhere, he found me. The email subject line was simple. Claire's father. I read your book. My stomach nodded. I opened it. You don't know me, but I know you. Claire wrote about you. In her notebooks. In her angry letters. In the ones she never sent. You were in all of them. I was not a good father. I don't expect forgiveness. I left because I was a coward. But I loved her. God, I loved her. Your book broke me. And for that I thank you. I've carried guilt my whole life. But reading about how deeply she loved someone, it gave me a strange kind of peace. She had that. Even if it ended in silence, she had it. If you're ever in Portland, I'd like to buy you a drink. Or just shake your hand. No signature. Just Claire's dad. I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't know what I felt. Anger? No. Resentment? Maybe. But mostly, I felt this deep, unexpected sorrow. Because here was another man broken by silence. By lost time. By what he didn't say when it mattered. Just like me. I didn't answer right away. But eventually, I did. I'd like that drink. And maybe we can talk about the girl who saved both our lives in different ways. 2 weeks later, I met him in a bar in downtown Portland. He was older than I expected. Weathered. Wore an old leather jacket and a wedding ring on a chain around his neck. Claire's mom? I asked. He nodded. She never forgave me. She shouldn't have had to. He smiled. You loved her, right? I didn't say anything. Didn't have to. We sat in that bar for hours, talking about her. Not the girl from the tragedy. Not the ghost from the letter. But the real Claire. The one who snorted when she laughed too hard. Who once ate an entire pie just to prove a point. Who cried during beer commercials. Who made us both believe we were more than we were. And that night, for the first time, I didn't cry when I said her name. I smiled. Because she was no longer just the girl I lost. She was the girl I lived for. And now her story was bigger than me. It was alive. Even in the wreckage. Started slow. A TikTok user. Someone I'd never met. Posted a tear-streaked video holding the book. Saying, I don't know who Matt is. But I hope he knows Claire was the kind of love people wait their whole lives for. That video hit 1 million views in 2 days. Then another one. And another. People reading the letter aloud. People crying in their cars. People going to piers. Holding their own unsent letters. Whispering into the wind. And then the press came calling. The first request came from a local radio station. They asked me to read the opening chapter. I said no. Then yes. Then almost backed out 5 minutes before going live. But I didn't. I sat in that studio, fingers trembling, voice cracking, and read the first few pages of To the Girl at the End of the Pier. When I got to the line, I dropped my coffee. My hands shook. I knew that handwriting. I used to dream about it. The host had tears in her eyes. After the segment, we sat in silence. Then she asked, Do you still love her? And I said, without hesitation, yes. After that, things spiraled. Podcasts, blog features, even a phone call from a streaming service about a potential adaptation. They wanted to bring Claire to life. I almost laughed, because Claire never needed help being brought to life. She was life, fire and softness, storms and summer, everything all at once. But I agreed. Not for me, for her. Because if the world was going to know her name, really know it, I wanted to make damn sure they saw all of her. Not just the heartbreak, not just the letter, but the girl behind it, the one who sang off-key, who believed love could fix broken things, who waited at a pier in the cold with nothing but hope in her chest. And with the attention came letters. Thousands. From strangers, widows, soldiers, first loves, people who had someone they never got to say goodbye to, people who had sent letters, people who never did. Every story hit me like a wave. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise, I realized something. Claire wasn't just mine anymore. She belonged to everyone now. Every soul who read those words and whispered, me too. She became a mirror, a voice, a warning, a memory. And for once, that didn't hurt. Because she deserved that. Not a gravestone, not a voicemail, not a letter that never came, but a legacy. And that's what she had now. A legacy built on love, pain, and words that arrived finally, when people needed them most, even if they came too late. It had been 20 years since the night she waited, since Claire sat in the cold, wearing my jacket, hoping I'd come. I didn't, but I was here now, and this time I wasn't alone. Emily came with me. She stood beside me, arms crossed against the wind, her red scarf whipping in the breeze just like Claire's used to. We didn't talk at first, just looked out at the water. It was dusk, the sky bleeding orange and purple over the waves. And for a split second I swore I saw her, sitting on the edge of the pier, barefoot, waiting. But it wasn't a ghost. It was just my memory, refusing to let go. Emily broke the silence. She loved this view. I know, I said. She used to say the water made her feel small, but in a good way. Like all her mistakes couldn't possibly matter with that much horizon. I smiled. She said the same to me once. We sat down on the bench she'd waited on. The same one where she held the letter, probably folded and unfolded it 100 times, whispering my name under her breath. And I pulled something out of my coat pocket. Copy of the book. Inside, I had written a single sentence in ink. I would have come, Claire. I swear. I just needed time I didn't have. I set the book down on the bench. Let the wind turn its pages. Emily watched, then reached into her own bag and pulled out something else. A silver chain. Claire's. I think this belongs here, she said, placing it next to the book. And we just sat. No tears this time. No breaking. Just stillness. Like we were keeping vigil for the girl who waited. Not in sadness, but in honor. Other people started showing up. I didn't invite them. Didn't post anything. But they came. Readers. Strangers. People with their own lost letters and unspoken love. One by one, they left things on the bench. Roses. Notes. Rings. One woman, probably in her 50s, placed an envelope down and whispered, "For him," before walking away with tears in her eyes. It was quiet. Holy. Like a funeral and a birth all at once. A ceremony not for a death, but for a story that refused to die. And for the first time, I felt it. Forgiveness. Not from Claire. From myself. I'd punished myself for years for missing one night. One letter. One chance. But now, surrounded by people who saw her through my words, I finally understood. Her story didn't end at the pier. It started there. And through every person who carried her in their heart now. She lived on. Beautiful. Bright. Unforgettable. It came in the most unexpected way. 6 months after the pier. The book was still circulating, still climbing lists I never thought it would touch. I was doing a reading in Seattle, signing copies, smiling for photos, answering the same 5 questions about Claire over and over. And then a woman stepped forward. Late 40s, sharp cheekbones, trembling hands. She didn't hand me a book. She handed me a small brown envelope. I wasn't sure if I should, she said. But it feels like it belongs to you now. There was no name on it. Just a date. June 3rd, 2005. The day before the accident. I waited until the hotel. Until I was alone. Until the world went quiet again. Then I sat at the edge of the bed and opened it. And saw Claire's handwriting. Not her usual mess of rushed thoughts and wild emotion. This was neat. Controlled. Like she knew. Like she needed every word to be exact. And it wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to herself. Claire, if you're reading this, it means you're still here. And if you're still here, I need you to remember a few things. You were brave. You loved fully. Even when it scared you. You didn't wait in vain. You waited because your heart was big enough to believe. He didn't come, but that doesn't make your love smaller. It makes it real. My throat closed. I kept reading. There will be other versions of love. Maybe not as wild. Maybe not as consuming. But love will come back to you in different shapes if you let it. But if, by some twist of fate, you never get to read this, if something takes you before you're ready, just know this. You mattered. You mattered so much. And I forgive you. For all the nights you doubted your worth. For all the times you thought you weren't enough. You were more than enough. You were fire in a cold world. Me. I held the letter against my chest. Tried to picture her writing it. Alone in her room. Maybe after our final missed call. Maybe after giving up hope I'd ever show. And yet, there was no bitterness in it. No blame. Just love. And mercy. And a deep, aching kind of peace. That night, I added one final chapter to the book. Not about the letter. Not about the woman who gave it to me. Just a quiet, powerful truth I'd taken too long to learn. Sometimes the person we wait for never shows. But that doesn't make us fools. It makes us believers. And belief, real belief, is a kind of bravery the world doesn't always reward. But it matters. God, it matters. Claire mattered. To me. To readers. To everyone who's ever loved in silence and hoped in the dark. And now her own words would be the last ones spoken. The final echo in a story that refused to fade. I never wanted to be the guy who talked about grief for a living. But life doesn't care about what you want. It cares about what you carry. And I carried Claire. So when a mental health organization invited me to speak at their annual conference in San Diego on loss, closure, and the power of unfinished stories, I said yes. Not because I had answers, but because I lived the question. The room was packed. Hundreds of faces. Some young, some worn out, all of them holding pain the way you hold a photograph of someone who used to be. I walked up to the mic, took a deep breath, and said, I didn't come here to tell you how to let go. I came here to tell you it's okay if you never do. Dead silence. Eyes wide. I kept going. I loved someone who waited for me, who believed in me, and I never got to tell her I loved her back. At least not in time. But I've learned something in the 20 years since. Grief isn't a wound that heals. It's a language, a second heartbeat. And love, real love, outlives the people who gave it to us. You could hear people crying, and I didn't stop them, because for the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone in the ache. I was surrounded by people who got it, and that made it easier to breathe. After the talk, a young man came up to me, probably mid-20s, tattooed arms, nervous hands. Can I show you something? He asked. I nodded. He rolled up his sleeve, and there, on the inside of his forearm, in delicate cursive ink, was a single name, Claire. I stared, couldn't speak. She wasn't mine, he said. Not really, but your story. She felt like mine, like the one I lost. I got this after I read the book. I wanted to carry her too. I blinked back tears, touched the ink gently with 2 fingers. She would have loved that, I whispered. He smiled. She saved me, man. You both did. I sat outside afterward, on a bench overlooking the ocean. Same kind of view Claire used to love. Waves crashing, sky bleeding color, wind tasting like salt and memory. And I realized something. She was never just a chapter in my life. She was a beginning, a catalyst, a comet that burned so bright, it set fire to everyone it passed near. And now, that fire was spreading, from page to page, heart to heart, tattoo to tattoo. She was everywhere, alive in the only way that truly mattered. In memory, in meaning, in story. I never thought I'd say those words again. I got married, not because I stopped believing in love, but because part of me thought loving Claire meant closing the door on anyone else. That moving on would be betrayal, that falling again would erase her. But I was wrong, because love doesn't erase. It expands. Her name is Lena. We met at a panel I almost skipped. She asked a question that made my throat close. Do you think grief can live next to joy? I told her, that's the only place it can live. Afterward, she found me in the lobby. We talked for 5 hours, and I didn't mention Claire. Not right away, but I didn't hide her either. 3 weeks in, I showed Lena the book. She read it in one night, didn't say much after, just curled up beside me and held my hand like she'd been there all along. When she finally spoke, it was quiet. She was extraordinary. I nodded. She was everything. And so are you, she said, because you survived her. I broke, right there in her arms, because that was the first time I realized I didn't have to let go of Claire to hold on to someone else. Lena never tried to replace her. She made space for her. We kept a photo of Claire on our bookshelf. Her ring is in a glass box by the window. Every year on the anniversary of the letter's arrival, we go to the pier, together, not to mourn, but to remember, to thank her. Because if it weren't for Claire, I wouldn't know how deep love can go, how far it can stretch, how it can burn you and build you at the same time. Our wedding was small. Beach, sunset, close friends. Emily was there. She cried the whole time. So did I. When it was my turn to say vows, I looked at Lena and said, I know what it means to lose a love too soon, and I know what it means to find one when you thought you never would again. I promise to love you fully, not in Claire's shadow, but because of the light she left behind. Lena whispered, I love you. And I knew Claire was smiling somewhere, because this wasn't betrayal. It was continuation. It was grace. It was life again. It's been 20 years since the letter arrived. 20 years of unraveling what could have been, of chasing ghosts through cities and silence, of learning that sometimes the greatest love stories don't end in happily ever after. They end in memory, in almost, in letters that arrive just a little too late. But now I'm older. I've lived a full life, loved again, lost again, and loved still. I've stood on stages, sat on docks, signed thousands of books, most of them with trembling hands. But every time someone asked, "Was Claire real?" I answered the same way, "Yes, more real than anything I've ever known." This morning I woke up early. Lena was still asleep, breathing soft beside me. I made coffee, pulled out a pen, and wrote one final letter. To Claire. Not because I needed closure, but because she deserved the last word. Or maybe I did. Here's what it said. Claire, I've carried you for so long. In pages, in breath, in silence. But now I carry you in peace. You waited for me at the pier, and I never came. And for years that moment defined me, haunted me. But now I see, that moment didn't break me. It made me. You taught me what it means to love without guarantees, to hope without reason, to believe in something you may never see returned. And that kind of love, it's eternal. I will always love you, not with grief anymore, but with gratitude. Thank you for the fire, for the letter, for being the spark that lit the rest of my life. I'll meet you at the pier someday, and this time I'll be on time. Love always, Matt. I folded the letter, took a drive, went back to the bench. The same one. The wood's older now, weathered. Like me. I placed the letter under the book still chained to the armrest. The one we leave open every year. The one people write in like a journal for the girl who changed their lives. Then I whispered, "Goodbye, Claire." But it wasn't a goodbye. Not really. It was just the end of the story. And every story needs an end. Even the ones that start with a single, forgotten letter. And a boy who never showed up in time.